Welcome to our first Resilience Group Community Podcasting. I'm Lesley Speedy.
I'm Vicky Grove.
And a part of the team have also managed to double book this morning to avoid the podcast nerves. But we just want to take a few minutes to basically explain why we're using this platform to podcast. And basically we want to promote other community groups, events and other activities in the area.
We'll be looking at running some themed discussions on mental health, maybe looking at building confidence, helping to lift low mood. We'll look at things like beating the bills in response to the energy crisis.
We also want to talk about matters that is affecting the community as well, looking to share stories, promote local heroes, anything that's going on as well. We want to look at local history and just to promote a bit of local knowledge and build that community resilience.
Which brings us on to really the topic of our first podcast. It's a good opportunity to talk about what our most recent project has been, and it's a proposal to reinstate the local football fields. Lesley, why is this something that BKRG are keen to take forward? How does this fit in with the work that we've been doing?
So I think during the pandemic, all the work that happened amongst the community and the resilience group, we saw the community coming together. And I think if we want to see positive change in the community, it's important that we capture that momentum and continue to build on those relationships that we developed during the pandemic.
So how did this idea first come up?
Well, basically, the idea around the sports fields was basically based on the research Dr. Judith Landau, Jack Saul, Professor Kai Erickson, where they looked at social crisis and how when a community goes into transition and how that impacts people within a community. And one of the theories being is what you call historical pathways. And it's reconnecting a community with its historical context. And then people can understand why the community is in the shape and the condition that it's in. So what we done then is we looked at the history of the local area and we tried to pull out key events that resonate with people, especially people that can still relate to the historical figures. And one of the key events was the local football field, the Kitmerhill Juveniles, who won the famous Juvenile Cup in 1951. And when you started to research that, you could see in some of the photographs on the Facebook pages, there's still a lot of family members who can remember that, who remember that their grandpas, their dads winning that trophy. So what we basically looked at then is how can we use the sports field and all the community momentum during the pandemic to actually build a positive vision for the future of Kitmerhill?
So when you found out there'd been a successful football team in the village, what did you do next?
The next thing was to start researching. So I ended up on lots of old football forums and started reading some of the links about the old Juvenile Cup. And that's when I found a historic link to the old leagues. And you could see where Kitmerhill was positioned in the league. You could see where they dropped off pre-war and when they came back in 1951. And in that season, they won 4 trophies. So when I started digging into that, one of the forums mentioned that the cup was in Hampden Park Museum. So I ended up just emailing the National Football Museum and they replied to me. And a few emails back and forward, I ended up going into Hampden, into the storeroom and actually seeing the trophy. And there it is in Hampden Museum's storeroom. The Kitmerhill's name engraved into the old Juvenile Cup. So that was actually quite a cool experience, actually. And what we'd done for that then, it was starting to build up. How do we use that? How do you use that key event, that event that brought the community together? How do you use that to set a positive vision for the future? So like I said earlier, it was based on the work of Judith Landau and Jack Saul. We started to think, right, how can we use the sports fields then to promote positive vision for the future? So we wanted some sort of sports fields reinstated again, so that would be the football park. We also thought, well, you see a lot of people out jogging in the community, especially on the road between Kitmerhill and Lesley-Mahego, so maybe a sports track. And I always remember going back to my days at Lesley-Mahego High School. The fastest runners in the school all came from Lesley-Mahego because they had a sports track up the top behind the Lesley-Mahego club. So I'm thinking, yes, we can have a sports track as well. But we also had a few people text us during lockdown about allotments and community gardening. So there is space at the sports field at the far corner where it's a bit overgrown to then start building a community allotment / community garden in there. But what that also does is it helps people reconnect with their environment again. It promotes biodiversity, and it also then starts to help people understand the effects of sustainability, climate change, and getting people to rethink their environment again. So reconnecting people with the outdoors is kind of key to a sustainable future as well. So it's more than just looking at the history, we used to have a good football field. It's using that historical tie, that emotional connection to your social surroundings, and then using that as a springboard to promote a positive vision and help the people of these communities transition into a more sustainable future.
So for people that are not originally from the village, or those of us that have moved here more recently, where is the football field?
So the football field is at the very top of your road, heading over the motorway, cut off as if you were going up the old abandoned road, and it's just sit on your left. So it just looks like a big flat field, where actually if you put a drone up, you'll actually see the old football ground markers, you'll see the car park, and you'll actually see the footprint of the old pavilion. And what people don't know as well was when the football team won the league, won the Juvenile Cup, I think it might have been the following year, the Juvenile Cup final was hosted on the pitch as well. And also the field, according to local myth, if you like, the field was actually donated to the community by one of the local farmers. And I can't find out too much about it. It's all word of mouth, but I'm led to believe that it was actually because of the success of the club that's why the sports field was actually donated to the community. And it's if you speak to some of the local men, that they've got a connection with it.
Mm-hmm. So what happens next then? Where do we go from here?
So the next phase on the sports development project is we need to now start looking at getting the resilience group governed and reconstituted as a social enterprise company, and then we could start the process of community asset transfer. And the next phase after that, well, it can run simultaneously, but we need to then start looking at raising up community engagement, getting out in there, talking to people in the community, getting comments and feedback about the project. And then again, it's taking all that evidence, and that helps you going forward for basically asset transfer, funding, and so on. But the aim of the project's not just to build a football field and reinstate a pavilion. It's to actually promote grassroots community groups as well. It's to create what you call sport and development. So getting young people into sport and activities, that helps build good citizenship. It helps them with health, physical health, mental health. And there's lots of different avenues that can open up into. And that's the same for the athletics track, and the same for the community garden as well. It's not just about the garden. It's about a place where people can go, meet friends, interact with others. It can be a place for a lot more creativity in terms of photography, learning to grow plants, vegetables, a place for the kids to come up and learn about biodiversity. It could also be used for artwork and things like that as well. So there's so many gains to have up in the field, and it's huge, and it's something that the whole community can benefit from. So
how can the community get involved in this project? What are we looking for from people?
I think what we're looking for is basically the community to back the idea, show support for the idea. And we'll basically be looking as well, when we're out and about in the community, they can expect us maybe carrying out a couple of surveys. We will be using another group through what you call the Accelerate programme to help us be doing community engagement. So you might see us out and about just taking questions and doing a wee bit of community research and to show the evidence as to why we need a project like this in the area.
So really we want people not to run away if they see us coming with a camera or a microphone.
That's exactly it. Don't run away when we're asking you to come and do a community podcast. But I think as well that the good thing about the project is we want to create sessional jobs in the back of this, and hopefully long term we could then build up the evidence with funders to get permanent jobs. And it's about where do people go after this. So people can then get into, if they're interested in sports development, there's qualifications there at universities and colleges. The same as horticulture as well. There's a lot of people in this area that take up gardening. There's a lot of people who have taken up community landscaping, landscape gardening, all that stuff as well. So there's so many qualifications. And for young people as well, we'd be looking to partnership with other organisations and start looking at getting young people in the area onto some sort of award scheme, be it Dookie Edinburgh, Young Scot, the Saltire Awards and so on. And it helps people in this area just get off that into the employability ladder, just get them out of difficult situations. And it helps give them a head start above their peers as well if they're going for their first jobs. But what it's also doing as well is for people in these communities, there's the theory of what you call rural poverty, where your chances of getting a job maybe in Glasgow or in other areas, you're kind of hampered because of transport connections. So we're trying to look at how can we then use the sports fields to create more opportunities for young people. How can you promote that confidence, self-esteem, and kind of support people with a long-term career aspirations and stuff.
So Lesley, how would you summarise what the Resilience Group has done and what we're aiming to do now as we move forward?
I think in summary, so previous during the pandemic, we were a response group to lockdown and isolation. And we set up our response operating model where we had the emergency response for the pandemic, supporting people with essential services. Then we focused a lot on community outreach in terms of all the mental health activities, fun activities to keep the community motivated, just cheer people up. I know it's what you call setting a positive vision for the future. So that's the stage we're into. So for that, as a group, we have to change into a social enterprise company. And although I've spoke a lot about the sports development field, there's lots of other wee projects that's in the pipeline, and we want to be around the village. We want to be making that physical impact. We want to make an appearance, a bit like the Daffodils, a bit like the Stone Wall project. We want the community to see change, we want the community to believe in change. And that's where we want to go. It's just building up that community self-belief, if you like, social self-belief. And I think going forward, it'd be good to expand our membership as well, get more people involved in the community and the Resilience Group. And again, podcasting, we don't want to just keep it to us. We want to get out and about. We want to be talking to other community groups, like we said at the start. We want to be talking to any other organisations in the area. We want to be promoting young people to get involved in the podcast, and we'd love more young people to get involved in this. So that's kind of the future.
So really we want people to stay tuned for the next podcast.
Absolutely, stay tuned, and this time we make sure that other members have no double booked and they can go through the podcast nerves.
Absolutely. Thank you everybody for listening. It's been an experience for us doing this for the first time, and if you've managed to listen all the way to the end, we really appreciate it.